Jake Morrison sat in the Grand Council chamber and tried not to sigh. The ceiling stretched high above him, covered in lights that represented every star system in the known galaxy. Around the circular room, representatives from 200 different alien species argued about trade routes and mining rights. They had been arguing for 3 hours. Jake was tired. He had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 5 years now, and every meeting felt the same. Humanity was always the one asking for peace, always the one suggesting compromise, always the one that other species ignored. Beside him, Ambassador Lisa Chen reviewed notes on her datapad. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her face showed the patience of someone who had spent 30 years in diplomatic service. On Jake's other side sat Ben Carter, a quiet man in a military uniform who rarely spoke, but always listened. The argument in the chamber grew louder. The Zelthar Empire wanted to expand their territory into a region that 3 other species also claimed. Their ambassador, a tall being with blue scales and 4 arms, was shouting now. "The Zelthar Empire has the right to take what we need," the ambassador declared. "We are strong. Strength determines ownership in this galaxy." Several other species murmured agreement. Jake noticed that many of them were looking at the human delegation with something like pity. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for 37 years, but they had never shown military strength. They paid their fees, they followed the rules, they never fought back when insulted. Lisa stood up slowly. The chamber quieted a little, though not out of respect. Most species found human speeches boring. "The Zelthar Empire should reconsider this expansion," Lisa said in her calm voice. "There are peaceful solutions available. We can mediate discussions between all parties. Please don't escalate this into a conflict." The Zelthar ambassador laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "Humans always say please. You say please when we take your trade routes. You say please when we ignore your proposals. You are weak, and the weak do not give advice to the strong." Other delegates joined the laughter. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face neutral. This happened often. Humanity had built its reputation on patience and diplomacy. Other species saw it as fear. "We are not weak," Jake said quietly, standing beside Lisa. "We are cautious. There is a difference. Please don't make us angry. You won't like what happens." This brought more laughter. The Zelthar ambassador spread all 4 arms wide. "The humans threaten us now? With what? Your 12 defense ships? Your research stations? You barely have a military. You spend all your resources on science and art and helping primitive worlds develop. You are not warriors. Accept this truth." Ben Carter leaned forward slightly. Jake noticed the military advisor's hand resting on the table, fingers drumming once, twice. It was a signal, a warning. But Jake shook his head slightly. "Not yet." "We are asking you to reconsider," Lisa repeated. "That is all. We hope you choose peace." The Zelthar ambassador dismissed them with a wave and sat down. The council moved on to other business. Jake returned to his seat, aware that every species in the chamber saw this as another human defeat, another moment of weakness. After the meeting ended, Jake walked with Lisa and Ben through the station's corridors. The Galactic Council met on a massive space station that orbited a neutral star. Ships from 1,000 worlds docked here. Beings of every shape and size moved through the halls. "They don't listen," Lisa said softly. "They never listen." "They think they know us," Ben replied. His voice was flat and professional. "They've studied our culture. They know we prefer negotiation. They see our small fleet. They make assumptions." Jake stopped at a window that looked out into space. Hundreds of ships floated in the docking area. Some were beautiful, covered in artistic designs. Others were clearly military vessels, bristling with weapons. Earth's 3 ships in the dock looked small and simple by comparison. "How many times have we warned them?" Jake asked. 217 times in the last 5 years, Lisa answered immediately. Every time we say, please don't make us angry. Every time they laugh. They don't understand the warning, Ben said. He moved to stand beside Jake at the window. They think we're threatening them. We're not. We're begging them. Jake nodded slowly. He thought about Earth's history, the wars that had killed hundreds of millions, the weapons that could destroy entire continents, the brief period when humanity had possessed the power to end all life on their own planet, and had come terrifyingly close to using it. That was why humans said, please. That was why they chose diplomacy first, second, and third. They knew what they were capable of when angry. They had spent 2 centuries building a culture of peace, teaching each generation to choose communication over conflict. But they also remembered. They trained. They prepared. Because history taught another lesson too. Sometimes peace was not enough. Do you think they'll push it? Lisa asked. Ben was quiet for a moment. Then he said, eventually someone will. Some species will decide to test humanity. They'll see our warnings as weakness instead of wisdom. And when that happens... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The 3 of them stood at the window, looking out at the peaceful station, the ships from hundreds of worlds, the galaxy that thought it knew humanity. 2 days later, the Kroll Confederacy attacked. The news came through standard channels first. 3 human colony worlds on the outer rim had gone silent. Then emergency signals arrived, broken and desperate. The Kroll, a militaristic species known for aggression, had raided all 3 worlds simultaneously. They had overwhelmed the small security forces. They had taken 2,000 colonists hostage. Jake received the full report in his quarters. His hands shook as he read the casualty numbers. 50 dead. 2,000 captured. The Kroll had broadcast their demands across every communication network. They wanted 5 systems currently held by humanity. They wanted access to human technology. They wanted tribute payments for the next 100 years. And they said if humanity refused, they would execute 1 hostage every hour. Jake sat at his desk and put his head in his hands. Lisa and Ben arrived within minutes, their faces grim. The council is convening an emergency session, Lisa reported. The Kroll ambassador will present their case. Their case? Jake looked up, his voice sharp. They attacked us. They're holding our people hostage. What case can they present? They're calling it a territorial dispute, Ben said quietly. They claim the colonies were built on worlds they had rights to. They're framing the hostages as detained trespassers. Jake stood up and walked to his window. His quarters looked out at the same view as the council observation deck. All those ships, all those species. None of them would help. They would call for negotiation, for compromise, for humanity to give the Krolls something to make them go away. Send a message to Earth, Jake said. Tell them what's happened. Ask for instructions. Ben nodded and left. Lisa moved to stand beside Jake. We'll warn them again, she said. At the council meeting. We'll give them one more chance. Jake looked at her reflection in the window. She looked old suddenly and very tired. And when they laugh? He asked. Lisa met his eyes in the reflection. Then we stopped saying please. The emergency council session began 12 hours after the attacks. The chamber was more crowded than Jake had ever seen it. Species that rarely attended council meetings had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to watch what would happen when someone finally pushed humanity too far. The Kroll ambassador entered the chamber like a conqueror. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin and sharp horns. His name was Krex, and he had a reputation for cruelty. Behind him walked 6 Kroll warriors, their weapons visible despite council rules about bringing arms into the chamber. The Kroll Confederacy has taken action to reclaim what is ours, Krex announced, his voice booming through the chamber. 3 worlds that the humans call colonies were built on territory we claimed 500 years ago. We have detained the trespassers. They will be returned when humanity acknowledges our rightful ownership and pays appropriate compensation. Jake stood slowly. Around the chamber, he saw representatives from other species watching with interest. Some looked sympathetic to the Kroll position. Others seemed curious about how humanity would respond. "Those colonies have been settled for 20 years, Jake said, keeping his voice level. They are home to 15,000 people. Your claim to those worlds was filed but never developed. Under galactic law, unused claims expire after 200 years. You have no legal right to those systems." Krex laughed. "Legal right? The strong make the law. The weak follow it. Which are you, human?" Lisa stood and moved to the center of the speaking circle. Her hands were steady now, but Jake could see tension in her shoulders. "Ambassador Krex, please listen carefully. Release our people. Leave our worlds. Do this now, and we will discuss your grievances through proper channels. We will find a peaceful solution. But you must release the hostages immediately." "Or what?" Krex leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You will attack us? With your 12 ships? The Kroll Confederacy has 6,000 warships. We are warriors. Fighting is in our blood. You are scientists and artists who hide behind words. You have no power here." Ben Carter stood then. He didn't move to the speaking circle. He simply stood, his military uniform crisp and perfect, his face expressionless. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. There was something about the quiet, human military officer that made them uneasy, though they couldn't say why. "Please don't make us angry," Ben said. His voice was soft, but it carried through the chamber. "This is not a threat. This is a warning. Release the hostages. Leave our worlds. Please." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some species found the human pleading pathetic. Others were confused by the intensity in Ben's voice. The Kroll ambassador threw his head back and laughed again. "Begging now? This is how humans respond to attack? You are more pathetic than I thought." Krex pulled out a communication device. "Perhaps I should demonstrate what happens when the weak refuse to acknowledge the strong." He activated the device. A holographic screen appeared above the council floor. It showed a large room filled with human colonists. Men, women, and children sat huddled together, fear clear on their faces. Kroll guards stood around them, weapons ready. "Every hour that humanity refuses our demands, one of these will die," Krex announced. "Let us begin with a demonstration of our seriousness." What happened next burned itself into Jake's memory. The Kroll guards selected a man at random. He was young, maybe 30 years old. He didn't cry or beg. He looked directly at the camera and said, "Tell them I love them." Then the guards shot him. The hologram disappeared. The chamber was silent. Jake felt something break inside him. It wasn't rage. It was something colder, something that came from deep in human history, from the days when survival meant being willing to do terrible things. Lisa's voice shook when she spoke. "You were warned. We asked you to please not make us angry. We tried. We really tried." "Tried to do what?" Krex seemed amused. "Tried to pretend you were strong? This is over. Accept our terms or watch your people die. Those are your options." Jake looked around the chamber. Other delegates were uncomfortable now, but no one spoke in support of humanity. Some were already calculating how they could benefit from this. If humanity showed weakness here, they would be easy targets for other ambitious species. The council leader, an ancient being from a species that had been in space for 10,000 years, spoke carefully. "Perhaps humanity should consider a compromise, some payment, some territorial concessions to avoid further bloodshed." "No." The word came from Ben. still standing at the human delegation area. No compromise. No negotiation. Not anymore. He pulled out his own communication device and spoke into it. Authorization code Carter 77 Blue. Execute Protocol Omega. Full authorization granted. Jake heard the code and felt his breath catch. Protocol Omega. He knew what that meant. Every human representative knew. It was the code they hoped would never be necessary. Empty words, Krex said. More human weakness. Lisa turned to face the Kroll ambassador directly. We sent you warnings for a reason. For 37 years, humanity has been the most peaceful species in this council. We avoid conflict, we choose diplomacy. We say please and thank you and sorry even when we shouldn't have to. Do you know why? Because you are weak, Krex replied. No, Lisa said, because we know what we are. We know what humans are capable of when we stop being peaceful. We have seen it. We have lived it. Our history is written in the blood of billions who died when we forgot how to say please. We learned that lesson. We built our entire civilization around never forgetting it. She walked closer to Krex. The Kroll ambassador towered over her, but she didn't flinch. Every time we said please, we were protecting you. Every warning we gave was a chance to avoid what comes next. We don't threaten. We warn. Because we hope desperately that no one will make us remember what we were. I am not afraid of human memories, Krex said. You should be, Ben said quietly. Protocol Omega is now active. You have 6 hours to release all hostages and withdraw from all 3 systems. If you do this, we will accept your surrender and discuss terms. If you don't, you will do nothing, Krex interrupted. You are bluffing. Jake stood again. 3 hours ago, you asked what humanity would do. That was your last chance to walk away. You chose to kill one of our people on live broadcast. You chose to threaten 2,000 more. You chose this. The Kroll ambassador studied the 3 humans. He saw Jake's tight jaw, Lisa's trembling hands, Ben's cold expression. For the first time, a hint of uncertainty crossed his face. You cannot defeat the Kroll Confederacy, he said, but his voice was less certain now. We're not going to defeat you, Lisa said softly. We're going to teach you why every species in this galaxy should have listened when we said please. Krex snarled and turned to leave, his warriors following. At the chamber entrance, he looked back. 6 hours? My ships will be ready. If you survive the battle, perhaps then we will negotiate. After the Kroll delegation left, the chamber exploded in conversation. Delegates shouted questions at the human representatives. What was Protocol Omega? What did humanity plan to do? Were they actually going to attack the Kroll? Jake ignored them all. He and Lisa and Ben left the chamber together, walking quickly through the corridors. They entered a secure communication room, and Ben locked the door behind them. Earth confirms Protocol Omega activation, Ben reported, checking his device. Admiral Parker is moving the 7th Fleet into position. Colonel Martinez has her teams ready for hostage extraction. General Brooks sends his regards and says it's about time someone made us stop being nice. Jake laughed, but it was a bitter sound. How long until we're ready? 3 hours for full deployment, Ben answered. But the first strike teams are already in position. They've been waiting for this order for 37 years. Lisa sat down heavily. We really tried. I need everyone to know that. We really, truly tried to avoid this. They'll know, Jake said. History will show that humanity gave warning after warning, that we chose peace every time until there was no other choice. They're going to be afraid of us after this, Lisa said quietly. The whole galaxy. They'll see what we can do and they'll fear us. Ben nodded. Yes, but they'll also know not to push us. That's the point. We don't do this halfway. We don't demonstrate force and then negotiate. We end threats completely. That's what makes the deterrent work. Jake checked the time. The Kroll have 6 hours. Will they use them wisely? Ben pulled up tactical displays on the room's main screen. It showed Kroll ship movements, defensive positions, fleet concentrations. No, they're mobilizing their full military. They think this is a bluff or that we'll send our 12 visible ships to be destroyed. They don't know about the other 200 ships we've kept in reserve. They don't know about the weapon systems we've never revealed. They don't understand what they've done. They killed one of our people, Lisa said, her voice hardening. They threatened 2,000 more. They laughed at our warnings. They chose this. Jake looked at his colleagues. These were diplomats, not soldiers. But they were also human, and that meant they understood. Peace was always the first choice. But when peace failed, humanity knew how to do what came next. Send a message to the Kroll leadership, Jake said. One final warning. Tell them we are no longer asking. Tell them this is their last chance, and tell them that we're sorry it came to this. Sorry? Ben raised an eyebrow. Jake smiled sadly. We're still human, Ben. We still say please and sorry, even now. But after this message, we stop talking. The message was sent. The Kroll response came 30 minutes later. They rejected all terms. They declared war. They promised to destroy humanity as a lesson to other weak species. In the secure communication room, Jake Morrison closed his eyes briefly. Then he opened them and gave the order he hoped he would never have to give. Execute Protocol Omega. Full authorization. Show them why we said please. The first Kroll station disappeared at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. It was a military outpost on the edge of Kroll space, home to 5,000 soldiers and 72 warships. The station's sensors detected nothing unusual. No ships approaching, no energy signatures, no warnings. Then it simply ceased to exist. The explosion was so complete that nearby monitoring stations first thought they had experienced a sensor malfunction. When they confirmed the station was gone, they assumed a reactor accident. It took 20 minutes for them to understand the truth. Humanity had attacked, and no one had seen it coming. Admiral Chris Parker stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, watching tactical displays with calm eyes. He was 52 years old and had spent his entire career preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Around him, crew members worked quietly and efficiently. There was no celebration, no excitement. They all understood the weight of what they were doing. Second and third targets destroyed, reported Lieutenant Dan Foster from the tactical station. All enemy vessels eliminated, 0 friendly casualties, no survivors detected. Chris nodded. Proceed to Phase 2. Colonel Martinez, status on the hostage extraction? On another screen, Colonel Kate Martinez appeared. She was in full combat gear, her face painted with dark camouflage. Behind her, Chris could see her team preparing equipment in what looked like the belly of a transport ship. We're 6 minutes from insertion point, Kate reported. Guards have noticed nothing unusual. We're going in silent as planned. Estimate 14 minutes for full extraction once we breach. Acknowledged, Chris said. You are cleared hot. Bring our people home. The screen switched back to tactical displays. Chris studied the Kroll fleet positions. They were mobilizing exactly as human intelligence had predicted. 6,000 warships moving into formation, preparing for a conventional battle. They were looking for humanity's 12 visible defense ships. They had no idea what was actually coming for them. Admiral, Kroll Command is broadcasting on all frequencies, a communications officer reported. They're demanding to know who attacked their stations. Let them wonder, Chris replied. No response. Next target is the shipyard at Kroll Prime. Weapons free in 30 seconds. Humanity's ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They used quantum tunnel technology that the Kroll didn't know existed. They could appear anywhere, strike, and vanish before sensors even registered their presence. The weapons they carried had been developed in secret over 3 decades, tested in remote systems where no one was watching. The galaxy thought humanity had 12 ships. The truth was, humanity had 214 dedicated warships, each one more advanced than anything the Kroll possessed. And every single human vessel was crewed by people who had trained for this moment their entire careers. The Kroll shipyard at Kroll Prime was massive, capable of building 50 warships simultaneously. It was heavily defended with shields, weapons platforms, and 300 guard ships. The Kroll considered it impregnable. Human strike teams proved them wrong in 4 minutes. "Third target eliminated," Dan reported. "The shipyard is destroyed. Estimated 1,500 enemy casualties. The guard ships never launched." Chris felt the weight of those numbers. 1,500 beings dead in 4 minutes. But he didn't look away from the displays. This was the price of peace through strength. This was why humanity had warned them. "Please don't make us angry. Please don't make us show you what we can do." They had said please. The Kroll had laughed. "Sir, we're detecting widespread panic in Kroll communications," another officer said. "They don't understand how we're attacking. They can't track our ships. They're calling it ghost warfare." "That's accurate," Chris said quietly. "Humans invented ghost warfare 300 years ago. We called it submarine combat back then. The principle remains the same. Strike without being seen, vanish before the enemy can respond, maintain absolute surprise." On the screen showing Kate Martinez, the scene changed. The transport had reached its destination. Through helmet cameras, Chris watched as human special forces moved through the facility where the hostages were held. The Kroll guards never saw them coming. Kate's team moved like shadows. They used non-lethal weapons when possible, lethal force when necessary. They disabled communications, sealed exits, and eliminated threats in perfect silence. Within 8 minutes, they had control of the entire facility. "All hostages located," Kate reported. Her voice was steady, professional. "We have 140 guards neutralized, no hostile resistance remaining. Beginning evacuation now. The hostages are scared but alive." Chris allowed himself a small breath of relief. "Get them out, Colonel. All of them." "Copy that, sir. Martinez out." The extraction took 12 minutes. Human forces moved all 2,000 hostages to waiting transport ships, while Kroll reinforcements were still trying to figure out what was happening. By the time Kroll ships arrived at the facility, the humans were gone. They left behind a message displayed on every screen in the building. "You were warned. This ends when you surrender. No negotiation, no compromise, only surrender." Back on the Intrepid, Chris watched tactical displays showing Kroll fleet movements. They were confused, scattered, trying to protect too many targets at once. It was a classic mistake. When you tried to defend everything, you defended nothing. "Status report on Kroll military capacity," Chris ordered. "They've lost 3 major stations, 1 primary shipyard, and 72 warships without firing a shot," the tactical officer responded. "Current estimates put their combat effectiveness down 18%, and sir, they still don't know where we are." Chris studied the numbers. 18% in the first hour. The Kroll still had thousands of ships, massive industrial capacity, billions of citizens. But they were learning something important. Technology mattered, preparation mattered, but what really mattered in warfare was understanding what you were fighting for and being willing to do what was necessary to win. The Kroll fought for honor and glory and the pride of conquest. Humans were fighting for something simpler and more terrible. They were fighting to make sure no one ever laughed at their warnings again. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," the communications officer announced. "They're demanding we cease hostilities immediately." "No response," Chris said. "We're not negotiating with the Council. We're not negotiating with the Kroll. We gave them 6 hours to surrender. They chose war. Now they get war." His second-in-command, Commander Greg Walsh, moved closer. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. The other species are going to be terrified after this," Greg said quietly. We've hidden our true capabilities for almost 4 decades. When they see what we can really do, when they understand what we've been holding back all this time, they'll fear us, Chris finished. Yes, but fear isn't the goal, Commander. Understanding is the goal. For 37 years, we tried to make them understand with words. We said please, we warned them, we begged them not to push us. They didn't listen. So now we teach them with actions. When this is over, every species in the galaxy will understand that human warnings are not threats. They're gifts, chances to avoid this. And if the Kroll don't surrender in 6 hours, Chris's expression hardened. Then we show them why the concept of total war was invented on Earth. We don't stop until they have no capacity to threaten anyone ever again. That's not cruelty. That's deterrence. The next species that considers attacking humanity will remember what happened to the Kroll. They'll think twice. They'll choose peace. That's the point. The tactical displays updated. More Kroll ships were moving into position, forming defensive lines around their core systems. They were adapting, learning. That was good. Intelligent enemies were easier to reason with after a defeat. "Orders, sir?" asked the tactical officer. Chris looked at the timer, counting down the 6 hours humanity had given the Kroll to surrender. 5 hours and 12 minutes remained. "We wait," he said. "We've demonstrated our capability. We've rescued our hostages. Now we give them time to make the right choice, but keep all ships on full alert. If they attack any human target anywhere, we respond with overwhelming force." "Understood, sir." Chris sat in the captain's chair and thought about Earth. Beautiful, complicated Earth, where humanity had learned the hardest lessons, where they had invented weapons that could destroy their entire species, where they had come within moments of using those weapons, where they had finally, after so much bloodshed, learned to say please. He thought about the colonists who had been taken hostage, the man who had died on camera, his last words a message of love to his family. He thought about the 50 people killed in the initial attack. Those deaths had purchased something, the lesson that humanity's patience had limits. "Sir." "The Kroll are broadcasting again," the communications officer said. "It's Warlord Krex, the ambassador who spoke to the council." "Put it on screen." Krex appeared, and Chris could see the fear in his eyes now. The Kroll ambassador stood in what looked like a military command center, alarms flashing in the background. "Humans," Krex said, his voice less confident than before. "What you are doing is dishonorable. You attack without declaration. You hide your ships. You fight like cowards." Chris leaned forward slightly. "You were given a declaration, multiple warnings. You chose to ignore them. You killed one of our people and threatened 2,000 more. You called us weak. You laughed at our pleas. This is the consequence of that choice. We demand to meet your forces in open battle," Krex continued. "Face us with honor. Human against Kroll, warrior against warrior." "No," Chris said simply. "We're not interested in honor or glory or warrior traditions. We're interested in results. You have 4 hours and 53 minutes to surrender completely, withdraw from all 3 human colonies, release any remaining prisoners, submit to galaxy-wide disarmament monitoring. If you do this, the attack stops. If you don't, we will dismantle your entire military infrastructure piece by piece. There will be no battle. There will be no chance for glory. There will only be defeat." Krex's face twisted in rage. "The Kroll Confederacy has never surrendered. We would rather die." "That can be arranged," Chris replied, his voice cold. "But understand this. We don't want you to die. We want you to surrender. We want you to learn. Because after this is over, after you've been defeated, humanity will help you rebuild. We'll feed your people, heal your wounded, help establish new government. That's who we are. We're the species that says please and helps even our enemies. But first, you have to stop fighting. The choice is yours." He ended the transmission before Krex could respond. Greg whistled softly. Do you think they'll surrender? Chris shook his head. No, not yet. Pride is a powerful thing. They'll need to be hurt more before they understand. But they will understand eventually. And when they do, the galaxy will learn the most important lesson of all. What lesson is that, sir? Chris looked at the tactical displays, at the Kroll fleets preparing for a battle they couldn't win, at the timer counting down. That the most dangerous beings in the universe are those who genuinely don't want to fight. Because when they finally do, they fight to make sure they never have to fight again. The Kroll did not surrender. When the 6-hour deadline passed, Warlord Krex broadcast a defiant message across every frequency. The Kroll Confederacy would fight to the last ship, the last soldier, the last breath. They called humanity dishonorable cowards who won only through deception. They swore vengeance. They mobilized their full military might. Admiral Chris Parker listened to the broadcast in silence. Then he gave the order that changed everything. Execute Operation Sunrise. All fleets, all targets, full authorization. Operation Sunrise had been planned for 30 years. It was humanity's doctrine for total war. Built on lessons from Earth's darkest history, the goal was not to kill enemies, but to eliminate their capacity to make war. Every military base, every shipyard, every weapons factory, every command center, all of it would be systematically destroyed until the enemy had nothing left to fight with. The Kroll had 6,000 warships. Humanity destroyed half of them in the first week. Lieutenant Dan Foster worked his tactical station with mechanical precision. He was 26 years old and had never been in combat before this week. Now he was coordinating strikes that eliminated hundreds of enemy ships at a time. Target Cluster 7 destroyed, he reported. Estimate 400 enemy vessels eliminated. Minimal debris detected. Confirmed, Chris replied. Move to Target Cluster 8. Time on target? 17 minutes. Sir. Chris watched the tactical map update. Red markers indicating Kroll military assets blinked out one by one. The Kroll fleets were trying to adapt. They spread out, making themselves harder to hit in groups. They set traps, hoping to catch human ships. They changed communication protocols, moved command structures, tried every defensive strategy they knew. It didn't matter. Humanity had studied warfare for 10,000 years. They had invented most of the strategies the Kroll were trying to use. On Earth, in a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Ryan Brooks coordinated the overall campaign. He was 70 years old and had spent 5 decades in military service. He had hoped to retire without ever activating these protocols. Now he managed a war across 20 star systems. Status report, he demanded. Kroll military capacity down 67%, an analyst responded. Industrial production down 43%. Naval projection capability down 81%. Current estimates suggest they can sustain organized resistance for another 2 weeks maximum. Civilian casualties? Ryan asked. Minimal, sir. Human forces are maintaining strict rules of engagement. Military targets only. We've had 3 incidents of collateral damage, all under investigation. Ryan nodded. This was important. Humanity wasn't trying to destroy the Kroll species. They were trying to destroy the Kroll military and break their will to fight. There was a difference, and maintaining that difference was crucial. What about their allies? He asked. Have any other species moved to support the Kroll? No, sir. The Galactic Council has declared neutrality. Several species that normally trade with the Kroll have cut ties. Intelligence suggests most species are waiting to see how this ends before taking any position. They're afraid, Ryan said quietly. They're realizing that humanity has been holding back for 4 decades. They're recalculating everything they thought they knew about us. Is that a problem, sir? No, it's the point. Fear is a better deterrent than friendship. We tried friendship. We tried diplomacy. We tried please and thank you and compromise. None of it worked. Now we show them why they should have listened. Back in space, the Kroll were learning hard lessons. They tried to launch a counterattack against a human colony. 300 Kroll warships jumped to human space, prepared for a glorious battle. They never reached the colony. Human defense grids detected them the moment they entered the system. Automated weapons platforms activated, fighter squadrons launched, and the colony's defense fleet moved into position. The Kroll fleet was destroyed in 47 minutes. Not a single Kroll ship escaped. The colony suffered 0 damage. Warlord Krex watched the reports in growing horror. His military commanders reported the same thing over and over. They couldn't find the human ships, couldn't predict their attacks, couldn't defend their assets. The humans appeared, struck, and vanished like ghosts. "How are they doing this?" Krex demanded. "How are they everywhere at once?" His chief military advisor, a scarred veteran named Tharn, studied tactical displays with confusion. "We don't know. Their technology is beyond anything we've seen. Our sensors can't track them. Our weapons can't target them. It's as if they exist in a different dimension." "They must have a limit," Krex insisted. "They can't keep this up forever." "Sir, we've analyzed the pattern of attacks. Human forces are not operating at full capacity. They're pacing themselves. They're destroying our military systematically, target by target, without rushing. They're treating this like a construction project, not a battle. It's methodical, efficient, and terrifying." Krex slammed his fist on the table. "We are Kroll. We do not surrender. We fight until victory or death." "With respect, sir, death seems increasingly likely. We've lost 70% of our military capacity. Our economy is collapsing. Morale is breaking. And the humans haven't even committed their full forces yet. Intelligence suggests they're still holding significant reserves." "Then we try something different," Krex said. "If we cannot win through conventional warfare, we use unconventional methods. Prepare the planet killer weapon. Target Earth itself." Tharn's eyes widened. "Sir, that would be genocide. The Galactic Council would condemn us. Every species would turn against us." "Better that than surrender," Krex replied. "If we cannot have victory, we will have vengeance. Prepare the weapon. Fire when ready." The planet killer weapon was the Kroll's ultimate deterrent. It was ancient technology, powerful enough to crack a planet's crust and render it uninhabitable. The Kroll had never used it, but it existed as a final option, a weapon of last resort. They moved it into position secretly, using civilian transports to hide its energy signature. They aimed it at Earth. They prepared to fire. They never got the chance. Colonel Kate Martinez had been monitoring Kroll communications since the hostage rescue. Her intelligence team intercepted chatter about the planet killer weapon. They tracked its movement, they identified its location, and they acted. "Target confirmed," Kate reported to Admiral Parker. "The planet killer weapon is positioned in Sector 77 Blue. It's armed and preparing to fire on Earth." Chris felt ice in his stomach. "Time until they can fire?" 18 minutes, sir." "Can we stop it?" "Already moving into position," Kate replied. "My team and I are on an assault shuttle inbound to the weapon platform. We'll disable it manually if necessary." "Negative," Chris said immediately. "Too dangerous. We'll destroy it from range." "Sir, the weapon is surrounded by civilian vessels. They're using them as shields. A ranged strike would kill thousands of non-combatants." Chris closed his eyes briefly. This was the nightmare scenario. The Kroll were willing to commit genocide, and they were hiding behind civilians to prevent humanity from stopping them. "Rules of engagement?" Kate asked. "Minimize civilian casualties," Chris said. "But stop that weapon. Whatever it takes. Authorization granted." Kate and her team moved like lightning. They infiltrated the platform, fought through Kroll guards, and reached the weapon control center. The battle was brutal and close quarters. Kate lost 3 team members in the fighting. But they stopped the weapon. With 3 minutes to spare, they disabled the firing mechanism and severed its power supply. Earth was safe. On the Intrepid, Chris received the confirmation and felt a weight lift from his chest. Then he felt something else. Cold rage. "The Kroll attempted to destroy Earth," he said quietly. "They attempted genocide. All restraints are removed. General Brooks, are you receiving this?" On the communication screen, Ryan appeared. His face was grim. "Confirmed, Admiral. The Kroll crossed the final line. What are your recommendations?" Chris looked at his tactical displays, at the remaining Kroll military assets, at the homeworld of a species that had just tried to commit genocide. "Complete dismantlement," he said. "Not just their military, their entire capacity to wage war, ever. Every shipyard destroyed, every weapons factory eliminated, every military base leveled. We don't stop until the Kroll cannot threaten anyone, anywhere, ever again." "That will take weeks," Ryan noted. "Then we take weeks. We tried to end this quickly. We gave them chances to surrender. They responded by trying to destroy our homeworld. So we show them the full measure of what humanity can do when we stop being nice." Ryan nodded slowly. "Approved. Execute full dismantlement protocol. And Admiral, make sure the galaxy is watching. Let every species see what happens when someone tries to destroy Earth." The operation took 3 weeks. Human forces systematically destroyed every military asset the Kroll possessed. Every ship, every station, every factory, every base. They did it methodically, carefully, with precision that amazed military analysts across the galaxy. The Kroll tried to fight back. They tried guerrilla tactics, suicide attacks, everything they could think of. Nothing worked. Human forces anticipated every move, countered every strategy, eliminated every threat. By the end of the 3rd week, the Kroll Confederacy had no military at all. They had ships that could carry cargo, but not fight. They had factories that could make consumer goods, but not weapons. They had a government that could administer, but not wage war. Warlord Krex broadcast one final message. He appeared on screen looking broken and old. "We surrender, unconditionally. Please no more, we were wrong, we were so wrong." In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Ryan Brooks heard the message and felt no satisfaction. Only exhaustion. "Cease all offensive operations. Begin Phase 2. His staff looked confused. "Phase 2, sir?" "Humanitarian aid," Ryan explained. "Food, medicine, reconstruction materials. The war is over, now we help them rebuild. That's who we are. We destroy those who threaten us, then we help them back to their feet. Because we're not monsters, we're just very, very good at war when we have to be." On the Galactic Council station, Jake Morrison watched the surrender broadcast with Lisa and Ben. Around them, delegates from 200 species watched in stunned silence. "They did it," Lisa whispered. "They actually did it. The Krolls surrendered." "Of course they did," Ben replied. "What choice did they have? We didn't fight them, we dismantled them, systematically, efficiently, completely. That's what total war means, not killing the enemy. Removing their ability to fight." Jake stood and addressed the chamber. "Let this be a lesson. Humanity warned you. For 37 years we said please. We said don't make us angry. We begged you to choose peace. The Kroll didn't listen. Now you've seen why we gave those warnings. Every species in this chamber should remember this moment. Remember that human patience has limits. Remember that human warnings are not threats. They're chances to avoid this." The chamber remained silent. Jake could see fear in the eyes of delegates who had mocked humanity just weeks ago. Good, he thought. Let them be afraid. Let them remember. Let them never, ever make us do this again. The reconstruction of the Kroll Confederacy began the day after their surrender. Human cargo ships arrived in Kroll space carrying food, medical supplies, and building materials. Engineers came to help repair damaged infrastructure. Doctors treated wounded soldiers and civilians alike. It confused the galaxy almost as much as the war had. President Julie Morgan addressed the Galactic Council from Earth. She was 63 years old, serving her second term, and she looked tired but determined. "Humanity did not want this war," she said. "We gave warnings. We offered compromises. We asked, repeatedly, that the Kroll choose peace. They refused. They attacked our colonies, killed our people, took hostages, and attempted to destroy Earth itself. We responded with force because we had no other choice. But now the war is over. Now comes the harder part." She paused, looking directly at the camera. Every species in the galaxy was watching this broadcast. "We will help the Kroll rebuild. We will provide aid, expertise, and support, not because they deserve it, but because that is who we choose to be. Humanity learned long ago that you cannot build lasting peace on hatred and suffering. You can only build it on hope and cooperation. The Kroll will be our partners in this, whether they like it or not." On the Kroll homeworld, Warlord Krex stood in the ruins of his command center and watched the broadcast. Around him, human engineers were already assessing structural damage. Human doctors had set up emergency medical centers. Human food distribution networks were feeding millions of Kroll civilians who had lost access to supplies during the war. "I don't understand," Krex said to General Ryan Brooks, who had come to oversee the reconstruction personally. "Why are you helping us? We tried to kill you. We tried to destroy your world. You should hate us." Ryan looked at the former warlord with steady eyes. "We do. Many of us hate what you did. But hatred doesn't build civilization. It destroys it. Humanity knows this because we learned it the hard way. We spent thousands of years hating each other, killing each other, trying to destroy each other. We nearly succeeded. Then we finally understood that the only way forward was to stop the cycle. To help even those who hurt us. To build peace through strength and mercy." "You are strange beings," Krex said quietly. "You wage war with terrifying efficiency, then offer aid with equal dedication. I have never seen a species like yours." "That's because most species never had to face what we faced," Ryan replied. "Most species developed space travel and joined the galactic community without nearly destroying themselves first. They didn't have to learn the lessons we learned. They don't understand what happens when a species with advanced technology and no self-control points weapons at itself. We do. We remember. And we promised ourselves we would never forget." Over the following months, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity transformed the Kroll Confederacy. Human administrators helped establish a new government based on democratic principles. Human economists rebuilt the Kroll economy around peaceful trade rather than military expansion. Human teachers opened schools that taught cooperation alongside traditional Kroll values. The Kroll resisted at first. Their culture was built on warrior traditions and military strength. But slowly, they began to change. The young Kroll especially embraced the new ways. They had seen what military pride brought them: defeat, destruction, occupation. The humans offered something different: prosperity, peace, partnership. Admiral Chris Parker visited a Kroll colony world 6 months after the surrender. He walked through a marketplace where Kroll and human traders worked side by side. Children from both species played together in a plaza. A Kroll elder approached him. "You destroyed us," the elder said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. "Yes," Chris replied honestly. "Your leaders chose war. We responded with overwhelming force. That is what happens when humans are pushed past warnings. And now you rebuild us. Why?" Chris looked around at the marketplace, at the children playing. "Because war is easy. Peace is hard. Destruction takes days. Rebuilding takes years. But peace is worth it. That's the lesson humanity learned. We share it with those who need to learn it, even if we had to teach it harshly." The elder nodded slowly. "My grandson asks questions about humans now. He wants to know how you move your ships without being seen, how you coordinate across such distances, how you rebuilt your own world after nearly destroying it. I tell him humans are teachers now, not enemies." "Good," Chris said. "Remember that. Tell your grandchildren. Tell them humans gave warnings for a reason. Tell them that if humanity ever says please again, other species should listen." Back at the Galactic Council, Jake Morrison noticed the change in how other species treated humanity. The mocking was gone. The dismissive attitude had vanished. When human representatives spoke, the chamber went silent. When humanity made proposals, other species considered them carefully. It wasn't respect exactly. It was something more primal. It was understanding. Every species now knew what humanity was capable of when pushed. They knew about the hidden fleets, the advanced weapons, the systematic approach to total war. They knew humans could dismantle a military civilization in 3 weeks if necessary. But they also knew humans would rebuild afterward. They saw the aid convoys, the reconstruction efforts, the patient teaching. The galaxy learned that humanity was dangerous, yes, but not cruel. Deadly, but not evil. Capable of terrible things, but choosing better ones whenever possible. A new species joined the Galactic Council in the 9th month after the Kroll War. They were called the Jek, and they were young and aggressive and eager to prove themselves. During their first council session, they got into a trade dispute with a human colony. The Jek ambassador was loud and demanding. He insisted that the human colony was taking resources that rightfully belonged to the Jek. He called humanity soft and weak. He said humans only knew how to hide and talk. Jake Morrison stood slowly. The chamber went instantly quiet. Every delegate remembered the last time someone had called humanity weak. "Ambassador," Jake said calmly, "we would be happy to discuss this trade situation. We can negotiate fair terms that benefit both our species. We can find a peaceful solution. That is what we prefer. That is what we hope for." The Jek ambassador sneered. "More human talk, more weakness." "We will take what we want. What will you do? Beg us not to?" Before Jake could respond, the Zelthar ambassador stood, the same one who had mocked humanity before the Kroll War. He looked different now, older and more careful. "Ambassador Jek," the Zelthar said quietly, "I need to tell you something important, something I learned too late. When humans say please, they are not begging. They are warning. When they ask you not to make them angry, they are giving you a gift, a chance to avoid what happens next." The Jek ambassador looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Around the chamber, other delegates began speaking. The Kroll representative, a young administrator named Thorn, who had replaced Krex, stood and spoke with quiet intensity. "I will tell you what happens when you ignore human warnings," Thorn said. "You lose. Quickly, completely, absolutely. Not because humans are cruel, but because they are efficient. They do not fight for glory or honor or tradition. They fight to win, and they are terrifyingly good at it. But here is the important part. Afterward, they help you rebuild. They teach you to be better. The Kroll Confederacy is stronger now than before the war, but in different ways. We are peaceful. We are prosperous. We are partners with humanity. It took a war to teach us this lesson. You do not want to learn it the way we did." Other species added their observations. The council member from a species called the Vrex explained human military doctrine as well as they understood it. A delegate from the Shen Collective described human humanitarian efforts. An economist from the Taylor Union showed statistics about how human aid had transformed the Kroll economy. The Jek ambassador listened with growing understanding and fear. Finally, Jake spoke again. "Ambassador Jek, the trade dispute you mentioned is minor. We can resolve it easily, but I need you to understand something. Humanity does not want to fight. We choose peace whenever possible. But we also remember our history. We know what we are capable of. So when we say please, we mean it. Please choose peace. Please accept negotiation. Please don't make us angry." The chamber was silent. The HFY ambassador looked around at 200 species all watching him carefully. I understand," he said slowly. "I apologize for my aggressive stance. Perhaps we could discuss this trade situation calmly?" "Of course," Jake said, smiling. "That's all we wanted. Calm discussion, mutual benefit, peace." The session continued with polite negotiations. The trade dispute was resolved in 20 minutes to everyone's satisfaction. Afterward, the HFY ambassador approached Jake privately. "Thank you for the warning," the young ambassador said. "My government did not fully brief me on humanity's capabilities." "Then let me brief you properly," Jake replied. "Humanity has fought wars that killed hundreds of millions. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world. We came within minutes of using them. We were so good at killing each other that we nearly committed species suicide. Then we learned. We changed. We built a culture around choosing peace. But the capacity for war never went away. It's always there, waiting, controlled but not gone. When we say please, we're controlling it. We're choosing peace over our nature. Do you understand?" The HFY ambassador nodded slowly. "Your species is dangerous because you know what you are." "Exactly. We know. We remember. We choose better. But choice requires options, and war is always an option. We just make it the last option, after all the pleases and negotiations and compromises. The Kroll made us use that last option. Don't make that mistake." 10 years passed. The galaxy settled into a new normal. Humanity maintained its position on the Galactic Council, but the dynamics had changed. Human proposals were taken seriously. Human warnings were heeded. Human offers of aid were accepted gratefully. The Kroll Confederacy transformed completely. They became one of humanity's strongest allies, their culture incorporating human values of restrained strength and peaceful cooperation. Young Kroll served on human ships. Human children studied Kroll history and art. The two species that had been enemies became partners. Other species learned to recognize when humanity was reaching the end of patience. There were signs: the careful wording of diplomatic messages, the quiet presence of military advisors at negotiations, the tone in human ambassadors' voices. When these signs appeared, conflicts resolved quickly. A phrase entered galactic common language. "Don't make them say please." It meant don't push a situation until the most dangerous species in the galaxy had to ask you to stop. By the time humans said please, you were already at the edge of disaster. Jake Morrison, now 70 years old, stood at the observation window of the council station one evening. Lisa had retired 5 years earlier. Ben had moved on to train the next generation of military advisors. Jake was one of the last humans who remembered the time before the Kroll War, when the galaxy had thought humanity was weak. A young human diplomat named Sam Hughes joined him at the window. She was 28, brilliant and eager to serve. "Did it have to happen that way?" Sam asked. "The war with the Kroll? Could we have avoided it?" Jake thought about the warnings they had given, the compromises they had offered, the patience they had shown. He thought about the 50 colonists killed in the initial attack, the man executed on camera, the attempt to destroy Earth. "We tried," he said finally. "For 37 years we tried. We said please more times than I can count. We warned them, we begged them, we offered them every chance to choose peace. But some lessons can only be learned the hard way. The Kroll had to learn, the galaxy had to learn, and in a terrible way, it worked. The galaxy is more peaceful now because everyone understands the cost of ignoring human warnings." "Do you think we'll have to do it again?" Sam asked. "Fight another war?" "I hope not," Jake said. "But if we do, we'll handle it the same way. Warn first, please first, exhaust every peaceful option. Then, if forced, Act with overwhelming force and absolute determination, and afterward, help rebuild. That's who we are. That's who we choose to be. Sam looked out at the stars, at the hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all coexisting peacefully in the neutral station. It's a heavy burden, she said, being the species that everyone fears. Yes, Jake agreed, but it's better than the alternative. Better to be feared and peaceful than weak and victimized. Better to say please and mean it than to say nothing and be ignored. The galaxy learned too late why we kept saying please, but they learned. That's what matters. Far away, on a Kroll world, a grandmother told her grandchildren a story. It was a story about pride and warnings and terrible lessons, about a species that said please until they couldn't anymore, then showed why the please had been important, about war and peace and the long road to rebuilding. Remember this, the grandmother said to the children. Humans are our friends now. They helped us become better. But if a human ever says please, you listen. You listen very carefully. Because humans don't threaten. They warn. And warnings ignored have consequences. The children nodded solemnly. They had learned this lesson in school, seen it in history recordings, heard it from every elder. It was the most important lesson their species had ever learned. Never make the humans say please, because by the time they do, you're already out of chances.